Hello. I was watching a guy on YouTube some painter guy that I like, and he did a video about all of the work that he did last year, and just kind of went through all of it. And so I went and looked at everything I did in the last year, and it turns out I made a lot of stuff. I kind of forget week to week because I'll usually draw something during the week that I want to make in Blender, and then I will make it on Saturday. And then sometimes I finish it, and sometimes I just kind of forget about it, or it doesn't really get to a point where I feel like it's done, so I don't post it. And or it's a thing I'm going to animate that later, and then I don't get back to it or whatever it is. And then it starts again, and I forget and draw a new thing. It's like, oh, actually, I'm going to make a snow cat or whatever it is. So I went and basically grabbed the renders or doodles or whatever from all of 2022 and just kind of put it in one spot. And I, it's kind of has the same effect to me of on Doodle Zone. There is the view where you can see everything at once. We're just going to get into it because uh, I hope this doesn't take an hour, but I'm going to shoot for 20 minutes. Beginning of the year, this is January 1st of last year. I was still working on a game with my friend Mark, and I was just kind of heads down making assets and little things to go in this game, and we were kind of figuring out how to do this. But we were kind of like in the swing of, figuring out how to work together on this game. I was just like trying to make different things that I thought would look cool. And that was just kind of the loop for the months. And we were just doing that for a long time. And I kept making stuff like this, which was supposed to be in the game, but I mostly just wanted to make a thing that looked cool. And this is another thing. I had made these characters at some point is, Boss Bot, and then the little white ball guy is Bud Bot. I made these characters and we were making this game, and I was like, we need to see them in a place. So then I just started making stuff like this where I made a big scene and made a cool looking render of these characters just to kind of, see it all happening. And it was fun, but I think it set me down this path of making way over indexing on making the art, making the scenes, and thinking about what's a cool scene I can make. All right, I'm going to try to make a forest scene where because the game as it ever was just kind of like a boss fight thing where you're this little guy trying to take down the big boss. So I was like, all right, what's some cool visual things I can make? And so I started with drawing this forest scene, thinking it could be a forest clearing or a warehouse. And so I kind of fixated on these things of what can I make given the constraints of the game, which is that it's kind of an enclosed space. So I kept making these things, and then I roughed together this city scene of here's a thing to kind of show this scale between the little guy and the boss. And I had made these cars already, which is why they're all in color, because I had made those for something else a while ago, and I just dropped them in. And that was cool to see. And then I just made the whole scene color and added some other details. And this was wow, all right, this feels like a thing that it's starting to feel more real, or more like a, I don't know, kind of more like a game. This is at the same time we're we had a working prototype where you could run around, and at the time BudBot had this little shield you could throw, and you could kind of stun the boss guy, and it was a whole thing. So I just went hard on making these I guess vignettes, or like little places. This was a hammer idea I had, which is kind of funny because later on I reused this like plug idea for a different game we made. But I made this hammer and we didn't do anything with it. I don't know, thought it was kind of cool. I was making just kind of like jokey. I kind of figured out the style of Budbot. He kind of had this little hat, sort of. He was going to have a little face where he could be kind of expressive, and this was going to be the look. At this point, we had decided he was going to have a hammer instead of a sword, which is what he had originally. But we thought a hammer made more sense. This is Mark, the guy I was working on the game with, has a bird named Momo. And one of the ideas Mark had was to have it wasn't a playable character, but like you worked with the bird, or the bird did something to help you in combat or something, or maybe it was you're protecting the bird. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to model the bird. And so this kind of looks like what Momo looked like. And then I animated it dancing because I thought that would be funny. That's all that is. There's going to be just like random doodles like interspersed here. And I think this is right around when I got drums. I got really into playing drums right at the beginning of the year. So that was why those are drumsticks. These are enemies for that game. The game never really had a name. Like it was Budbot was the name of the main character, but we never had it was not really a full thing. So I kind of doodled these enemies, modeled them, and then eventually these characters made it into the game as like a little, they kind of would swarm around you, which was kind of cool. Again, I was into getting into drums, and I was like half made this drum kit, and then I didn't even make the cymbal stands yet. But this is probably one stream where I was just like, I want to make a drum kit. And so I mostly did that, but there's that. This is just a shape. Sometimes when I'm drawing, I draw at night before I go to bed, and I will sometimes just sit down and start drawing a shape. In this case, it didn't turn into anything. It's just a shape. And there's a couple more of these that are in here that are just like, it's meaningless, but it was something I drew right before falling asleep. These are the hammers that we were trying to make. We decided it was going to be hammers, so I tried just doodled a bunch of different hammers. This is that one with kind of more of a plug thing. This is the one that we ended up going with. It's kind of a combo of these two, but then I made it, and that went into the game. And then but right before this stream, I tried firing up the game, the last build of the game we had, so I could show it being played. But at some point I had uninstalled this old version of Unreal Engine we were using, so I couldn't get it to be playable, which is frustrating, and I just ran out of time. But it was in this warehouse that I was working on that playable. It was barely a demo, but it was a playable thing. And this is a version that I made this jokey disco ball. But eventually it looked like this, or at least my render of this looked like this. And like I said, I went so hard making all of these little things. Like I spent a week making this forklift, or whatever it was. In a different one, there's shipping crates, and I spent all this time trying to figure out the best way to make this shipping crate. And I made this whole modular system for the walls and these I-beams, and just completely lost my mind doing what I thought was my part of this project, was just churning out a bunch of art assets and animation stuff. There's tons of animations, which I think are next, of different attack animations or a jump thing or all these things. And it was just it just ballooned into just tons of different things. But here's the problem. Mark and I had never really made a game. We did a game jam together that didn't go great. And then we were just like, hey, we like the same kinds of games. Let's just try to do this. He was just kind of learning. He knows a lot about Unreal, but we were both learning how to do this. And I think the challenge was always like, we kind of knew what felt right or good about games, but we had never really practically done it. I had never actually animated something to be used in the system of a game. So I didn't really know like the nuances of, okay, an attack animation should have like hold frames when it hits, so it feels like it's more weighty. I didn't know any of this. And so I'm just like, oh, okay, I will do a dodge roll, which I think is in here, or attack animation. And we throw it in the engine and it wouldn't feel quite right, but it was always like, it was so complicated and there were so many different little animated pieces or whatever that it was really difficult to iterate on making these little things work and feel good and, progress this thing, that it just like very slowly kind of ground to a halt. And I think a lot of that was we hadn't really figured out what the game was. Like it was kind of a boss fight. You could eventually you could throw your hammer and hit the boss in the head. And if you did, you would stun him. Like we had kind of figured out some mechanics, but it never really fit together into a game. Like it was like it never felt great. And while we weren't figuring that out, or whatever, I just like completely went like head first on all of the art stuff. And this was before like the game was like, I mean, it was playable, but before it was good or felt right, or we had figured out like just like core themes and mechanics and all this stuff. And so it got basically really, really, really top heavy, where the game itself was fine, but I piled a ton of art and animation work on this like sliver of an idea that we had barely gotten out the door with. And so and then it was like, oh, I kind of bit off all of this artwork to do. And all of a sudden it hit me like, this is way more work than I have the time or capacity to do. And at the same time, like Mark, we were just trying to figure out what the like core of it was. And eventually we just kind of hit a wall of just like, it was just kind of untenable, and we just decided to kind of stop working on it. And so I have some more stuff that I made for this. So here's another view where I put in some more enemies, that shipping crate I was talking about. But I put in some of these little enemy guys. These ones were flying, which is pretty fun because they'd kind of like chase after you if you ran up on this thing. At some point we were talking like, oh, well, what if it'd be kind of cool maybe if it was 2D, so you were stuck on this, a 2D plane and doing this. But I think both of us don't really like games that are constrained that way. So I just thought this looked cool. That's the main takeaway here. So that's why I made this. I think here's some animation pieces. If you were anywhere kind of in the area of the boss bot, he would actually leap toward you, which was kind of cool to see because he was so much bigger than Budbot, and it was like a third person camera, that this massive thing would just be flying at you and hit the ground and you'd go flying, and it was pretty cool. This is another one that I made kind of for fun, but it's still one of my favorite things. I animated and I did it in like 10 minutes of just BossBot laughing at you after you died. I don't know. I think that's fun. It's the dodge roll. Like, this is a hard thing to animate. Turns out, like, this is just like a rough. Some of these GIFs that I have in this are just like rough screen captures I did while we were working on it, so they're pretty low quality. But anyway, I think that might be the last thing from that game. I'm not sure. We'll see. These heads, I've talked about them in the past, but I've drawn a bunch of these heads just for something to draw. I went and recounted them when I collected all these images, and there are 71 right now. So I kind of do 3 at a time, depending. And I want to do something when I get to 100, if I get to 100, but 71 so far. There's 3 more. I don't know. They're fun because they're very quick, and you can just make a little weird person with a big nose, and that's still going. I made a sad clown. I'm not sure why I don't remember. This was back in April. I don't remember anything from April. This is another thing. This was the warehouse. There's my shipping container back there. An idea I had while we were kind of figuring out what we were doing was to make that warehouse more of a, like, beaten down apocalyptic warehouse where it's, there's a big tree growing up the center of it and whatever. That would have just made the art problem way worse if we ever did that. But that's what that doodle is. More heads. I think I remember this guy. This is the guy from Westworld. I think I remember drawing specifically that guy. I think he was in a different show we were watching, but sometimes they're real people. Normally it's just a shape. It was a different idea for the BudBot game of, like, what if the world were, like, there were giant robots that if this is BudBot down here with his little face. If you were kind of out in the world and then there were giant corpses of huge robots and that's what you were kind of walking around in, that would be cool. But again, yeah. This is something I saw. So we were still in Seattle back in April, and I saw a truck like this, and I thought it was really cool because it was just full of cones and like street things. I was like driving, and I wanted to take a picture of this car because I was like, wow, that is so. It was just a little truck like this covered in stuff, and I was like, man. I was driving, but I kind of wish I had gotten a picture of it because it was really cool. More heads. This is me. I don't know who this is, but sometimes I used to draw myself a lot just because a long time ago I was not very comfortable drawing people. And I just started drawing myself because it was easy to, I don't know, practice, I guess. This is a glass repair vehicle. One of the many things I kind of learned this year about the art stuff that I've done is that I really like making little vehicles, turns out. And this little glass wagon was one of the things of just like, hey, I'm just going to make a weird vehicle. So then I think after that I drew this, I decided to just make it. So I modeled it, and this is another one where I never really finished it. I wanted to go back and kind of finish, like you can see how kind of simple the front of it is, and I didn't even cut out the wheel wells and anything. But I put the little frog guy in there, and I was like, oh, that's fun. But I never really got back to finishing, or what I thought would be finishing this thing. So that's on the back burner with all those other things. But more heads. This guy kind of looks like Frank with a little hat on, maybe. I don't know why I drew a turtle, but yeah. So back in, this is from May, end of May, and we had gone back to Minnesota, and I just had it in my head that I should just animate a luggage, a little luggage truck, because I had kind of had a truck like that. I was like, I want to animate something stupid of a little truck like this swerving through an airport, and then just make it like a looping thing. And so I was just like, I've been sitting on it since now May of actually making this happen. So right after I drew this, I went and made it. This is one of the Suzuki Carries. This is a truck I made a long time ago. And so I was like, oh, well, we're like halfway there. I just needed to make these planes and kind of, build in some details. And it was just a thing that I like started, but then kind of just ran out of steam, and, something else came. I think this is the other game I worked on this year next. Oh, I drew this big map of what it was going to do. And so, swerving back and forth. And then in my drawing here, it was going to hit the speed bump, and then a little box would fly out, or, maybe stuff would fly out on all these curves or whatever. But what's funny, I know I've been looking through all these things. It's funny, like I made all these choices back in June, and I finally like started putting them together like, a month ago, just because finally got to it. But anyway, I drew this map of what the thing was going to be. I didn't really get to it then. Okay. So in June, Mark was doing another game jam, and game jams are just kind of like a short thing where you take a couple weeks to try to make a game. And he kind of reached out. I was like, hey, do you want to like do some art for this or whatever? And I was like, sure, great. Like the other game just kind of fizzled out, and we were just both kind of burnt out on it. But it was like, hey, there's a new thing, 2 weeks. Let's try to do something quickly, see how it goes. So this is, I think, one of the first ideas was it was going to be like a platformer where you were this little plug robot where you could plug into stuff and swing. And there were so many ideas at the beginning of the game jam that was just like, well, yeah, sure, it's a little swinging guy. And so I just drew it real quick, and everyone was like, wow, that's cool. We're not doing that anymore. Okay, it's fine. So then after that, I was like, I think the theme of the jam was connection. So I think that's why we ended up thinking or talking about plugs and outlets a lot, because it was like, it's a thing you connect in, whatever. So I just drew this little plug guy, plug bot, and everyone was like, yep, that's it. That's what we're doing. So plug bot it was. So I then drew like a logo screen, or like a, a start screen, I guess, for a game. And anyway, this is a pretty fun project because I now knew how to rig and animate characters like quickly. So after I drew this, I was like, I know how to make this. I can model it really quickly. I can animate it, and I can do a couple basic, like I did a jump and a punch. We'll get there. But it was fun to just be able to like, here's an idea. I know how to do this. We can get into Unreal in this case, like quickly. So here is a idle animation I made for Plugbot, because it's such a simple model, right? It's just like a square that I kind of rounded a few times. So that's like the animation. I made kind of like a jump. And this is my favorite, is this run cycle. I think is very good. To toot my own horn, 25 minutes into this. I thought this was really fun, and it was really cool to see in game because it actually kind of felt chunky, and he felt kind of weighty running around as this little plug guy. This animation is when there were outlets on the wall, because Plugbot would run out of energy. He could run and jump up into the outlet on the wall, and he would go limp. His arms would just kind of flop down. And then after he was done charging, he would then push himself out and then kind of go back to, running around. That was fun to animate. I had a lot of fun working on this project because it was constrained, I guess. It was like, here, it's a quick thing. It's kind of stupid. Let's just make it fun. The other thing I got to do on this was like all the lighting and a lot of the level design stuff because I could go into Unreal and move lights around and make it moody, or I made like a kind of glowy. I should have found that and put it in here, but I made like a big power thing to go in there. I had this running, but I'm not going to show it, but you can see it was just kind of like a platformer, like a Mario, like a 3D Mario basically, but you were this little plug guy, and there was a bunch of enemies. But the lighting was fun to figure out. There were these sentry type things that would shoot these giant rockets, and so it was surprisingly kind of hard to make it through this 3-minute level. But was it going to be a boss for that game? But we kind of we definitely ran out of time in the jam. But I think we were trying to figure out what we could do if we just kind of finished the game, like if it was expanded on or built some more levels or made a boss fight or did something. At the time, and maybe this is always the case, at the end of a game jam, it's like, hell yeah, I really want to do this thing. Let's go. We're going to make a real something. Which is just fun, like the game jam was fun and we worked well together. But then it's just like, I think right around, this was in June. This is right around when we were moving to Minnesota. So it was just like, I had no time to work on this, and everyone else was just like, dust to the wind or whatever the saying is. So, back to some random doodles. I think this is when it was really hot out, or it was hot for Seattle, which was the year before. It got up to like 120 one day, and that was awful, but just melting. I made this so at my job, I work, an agency, and we were working on a product called Pennant. That's like a live streaming service for like musicians, so they can have their own like streaming and for like live concerts and stuff like that. It's called Pennant, and I made this. It was for a blog post. It was just like announcing Pennant was live, and I just made this in like an hour and a half, and I thought that was fun because I had made this amp a long time ago. I found the drum kit, and I like made all this thing, and just like assembled it all and lit it. And sent it to my coworkers, like, all right, here we go. And they're like, what? Like, okay, cool, thanks. And I, that was fun. This was a comic about, I used to do a lot of comics on Doodle Zone. This is from when we were signing the papers to buy our house, and the lady, it was hot, and we did it on the back deck, but this lady, the notary that came to notarize the whatever it was we were signing, was like very strange, very talkative, and very just obsessed with the sand on our table. So this is what our deck looked like, and I had made this table, and it was a little dirty, just a little bit, getting rained on or whatever. And this lady was like pissed that her papers were a little bit dirty. And so Caitlin was then tasked with, which is what the doodle is here, wiping off all 90 sheets of paper so that this lady would like stop complaining about how dirty the paper was. Anyway, it was very memorable how weird that was. This is just a frog. I think in one of the Slacks I'm in with some art people, they were like, hey, everyone should draw a frog. I drew a frog. I drew these shoes randomly. I like drawing. I like making shoes and cars, and like I don't know. But I drew this, and then I modeled and animated this, and this is not. Let's see what's it called. 90s toy movie. So the reason it is styled like this with this green lighting the movie Small Soldiers had lighting like this, where it was blue and then it had this green accent light on it. For some reason, it just stuck in my mind of like, that's a very like evocative or memorable thing. So that's why I did the green light on these shoes, just because of Small Soldiers. Anyway, I think I drew this robot after playing the game Stray, which had a lot of robots like this. And I was like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to make another humanoid robot. I never did, but it's fun to doodle. A couple more faces. I used to draw a lot of these buildings that are just like, I even made a tag on Doodle Zone for these buildings. I used to. Yeah. I've drawn a lot of these. And they were just, for a long time, they were just these stuff like this. Like it was like a gas station or something. And this is the thing that I like want to figure out how to make in 3D or do something with. Just because I have so many of these little buildings like these ones. Anyway, it's one of those. Right. It's the frog guy that I made this frog guy last year and kind of animated and did stuff, but I felt like drawing him again for some reason. Okay. This is Mark was working with some other people on a game that was kind of like a Mad Max style car combat type thing. And he was just kind of talking about it, and I was like, oh, that would be kind of fun just to try making something trying to draw or illustrate a car like this or make it or whatever it was. So I drew this, and then I went and modeled it that week, and it's kind of cool. And I was like, yeah, it's not really done, but whatever. And then I was like, what would be cool is putting it in a scene so I could actually see it and, do something with it. And so I made this like still image, and I was like, this would be cool. And I can maybe figure out a way to kind of loop this. And one of the things that my favorite part of this whole thing is the way these dust trails look. And they're just kind of the way they kind of fade together and whatever. So that's mostly what I wanted to figure out. And so I actually did figure out a way to do this with, I was going to do this with in Blender's called Grease Pencil, which is their like 2D animation thing. But it doesn't, there's some like weird limitations to it. And I couldn't animate it or make it look the way it does in that render. Like it has to do with shadows. It's a whole thing. But I basically figured out that if I animate it in 2D and then bring it back into Blender as basically like a little video clip of that dust, it would work the way I wanted. Anyway, this like took me a couple weeks to to figure out. But this is kind of how it works of these little planes of the dust animation are then rigged to the car, which is what this box was part of. And so that's how it got to look the way I wanted, which I think turned out pretty cool. But this is for a game that Mark, I think he's still working on it maybe, but I mostly just wanted to try to figure this out because there's a lot of really cool animated things that are 3D, but then they work in 2D elements. I made a birdhouse after drawing these, or I was thinking about making a birdhouse, and I actually did make it. And this weird stuff over here is my Apple Pencil dying. I'm not really sure what. That's what that is. This is. I never posted this, but this is a rookie card for a bacon or BLT with avocado. With spicy mayo. I told someone that was my favorite sandwich, and I just I don't know how we got to talking about it, but I just said that I had this Sandwiches rookie card, which is just like a stupid thing that I thought of. And so then I just drew it because I thought it would be funny to make a T-ball card for this sandwich. Just, anyway, very stupid. Uh, just some food. This is another thing where I probably drew. I think I drew this muffin, and then I was like, oh, I should just draw a bunch of other little foods or stuff, and then immediately fell asleep. So this is in November. I kind of started thinking more about the airport thing, and like I just drew a bunch of luggage, thinking like, oh, that's another thing I need to add to that airport. So I drew a bunch of luggage, and then I made a bunch of luggage. And some of these boxes I had already kind of made, or these cones have been in everything, but it was kind of fun to just make a bunch of luggage and, put it into that big airport scene, which is still not done. I still need to finish rigging the truck, which is what this is. I want to animate or have the truck tilt up onto each side like that. And there's probably a way to rig this car well. I don't know how to do it, but that's a thing I need to do that I've been putting off, is just rigging this car better so that I can animate it tilting and tipping over like this, because I want it to be, over the top. The other thing I kind of started animating was the truck. I kind of put in a box in the back and try to figure out the correct way to basically have it fall out of the truck and then slide. You can see that happen. And this is like a surprisingly difficult problem in animation that I think I know how to do it now. I asked around for what you're supposed to do for this. But it's another thing where I need to figure out how to re-rig the truck, and then I need to figure out how to do this correctly. In addition to like actually filling out that scene and assembling it all. So that's a thing I'm going to do soon. Another just random vehicle. I think I ended up halfway through drawing this. I was like, oh, maybe it's like a tomato truck or something. So I drew a little tomato. I don't know. That's just the vehicle. This was a skate shop that I drew for a couple, I guess now a couple years ago. I was doing all these things with all these characters that skateboarded and did stuff. And I just ended up drawing this. I think it's a cow that owns the skate shop. I don't know. It's just another half of an idea. This is just a shopping cart that is on fire. I drew a skate park. This is loosely based on the skate park we used to live near in Seattle. But I kind of wanted to make a skate park for this, all these characters that I had bikes and skateboards and stuff. And so that's what that is. And then I made it that next week. And so I put the seagull guy that has the skate, the pads on and all that. It's fun to like bring in all the cars that I had made. But this is one where it was like really fun to put together. And then I was like, well, it's not really done, or there's not really anything happening here. Maybe I can animate something within this scene or just add some more detail. I don't know. This is why I don't end up posting things, because I don't know what done is or means. Made some robots. I don't remember why I wanted to make another robot, but I was going to make a robot that had a translucent head, and make it kind of like the teal IMAX. And you could just see like the CRT and all this stuff. I don't remember why I was doing this, but for a while there, I wanted to make that. This is another, just a random shape that I wanted to draw. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know what it is. And then the last things here, no way I was going to do this in 20 minutes. The last thing I drew here was, well, this is just the trail map for a ski resort. Because I think the order is a little different, but I made a trail map for a resort. And then I re-illustrated it in Illustrator, which was fun, and then put it on a physical trail map for this little resort. And then I made a snowcat, which is, again, just a fun, weird little vehicle. So then I made that. And this is, I think there's probably some more details I want to add to this snowcat, but it'd be fun to like animate this thing or do something. But these were all going into this scene I drew of a ski resort chalet type thing, which is not really based on anything, but just I think on one of my streams, my mom was like, "Oh, why aren't you doing any winter stuff? Because it's winter now." I was like, "Oh, well, here we are." So I drew this, and then I made this scene from that or whatever. And this was fun to figure out. And you can't really see it because I put a bunch of stuff in there. But one of my favorite things that I figured out is that on the snow, I actually figured out that like glistening sparkle effect that snow has because of the ice crystals. And if you look out over snow, some of it kind of, shimmers. And I figured out how to do that. And I think that was pretty fun to figure out. So at some point, I think I'm going to combine this with the snowcat. I was making some gear for the seagull, like a snowboard stuff. Maybe like animate something in this scene. I don't know. I don't know what done is. So we'll see. But I think that is it. So like I said, still really surprised how much stuff I actually did in the last year. It took me a while to talk through all of it. And that isn't even everything. Like there's so much stuff that I animated for the first game that I didn't put in here or whatever it was. And it's surprising to me how fast this year went by and how much stuff I actually ended up putting together. Because it's easy for me to forget that there's, by doing these streams every Saturday, that's, roughly 52 weeks, right? Or is it 54 weeks? It's a lot of weekends. It's a lot of Saturdays to actually sit down and spend 3 hours ish, working on something. So I'm surprised how much stuff I've done, but I'm also pretty happy with how much I know how to do now just because I sit and do this. And I don't know. I have a lot of fun doing it, but thanks for watching this. I don't know. I kind of want to do more things like this, or at least post things more. But yeah, I guess, yeah, we'll see you soon.